everybody, it's Dana. Welcome back to day 4 of the holiday card series. Let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to be doing a technique that I love to watch Christina Warner do, and that's faux dipped dye watercoloring. I thought I would give this a try, and I'm going to give you some tips and tricks along the way just in case you want to try this as well. Now, I've cut down some Canson watercolor paper, and this has been cut down to A2 size, which is 4¼ by 5½. And I'm going to go ahead and tape them to my clipboard. This is going to prevent it from bowing when I start adding the water. I also try to make sure that I press down the seams of that tape very, very well. All right, I'm going to use my Mission Gold paints. These are the same paints that Christina used, and I'll make sure to list everything in the description box below. I'm also using a flat brush. This is, I believe, a size 8, and I have 2 containers for water and a rag to help me clean up my mess. Now, I did go ahead and spray my watercolors, all of them, because I really wasn't sure what color I want to start with. And my first mistake was I sprayed the paper as well, and I did not mean to spray the paper. So I'm going to first start mixing my color, and I want a very light green. So I mix that in my palette, kind of put it off on a piece of scratch paper to make sure it's the color I want. And once I have it, before I go to paint, I am going to dry back that paper. Lesson number 1, follow Christina. So I'm going to tap off some of the water that's at the top because I don't want my paint to bleed upward. And I am starting off with a very light hand. And I will tell you, as I started to do these more and more, I got a little bit more forgiving with myself. And I think the color process went a little bit better. As you can see here, I pulled all the color down and I went ahead and heat set that. Now, when you do that, just remember you're already going over a layer of color. So be mindful of that. So as I keep laying down this paint, I ended up pulling the paint all the way down to the bottom. That's going to kind of already start building up my depth. Another thing I realized when I was starting this process was I think I was making my lines or my gradations a little bit too close together. So just be mindful as that as well. I have seen Christina do this dip dye technique for years, and I think it's so beautiful. So I was like, what the hell? We're going to go ahead and give that a try. Now I went ahead and worked my way through all of my colors. Each time I'm doing it, I'm adding a little bit more of the green, and I actually, towards the end, brought in a little bit of black to really deepen up that green for me. So I'm going to go ahead and keep working this in. And again, like I said, first try, I felt I really needed to kind of loosen up things and get things moving a little better. But I'm not going to throw away this piece. I want you guys to see that even if it doesn't come out how you visualized it in your head, it's still going to work for you. All right, I finished that one. I'm going to go ahead and move over to my next one. Now, this one, I want it to be maybe like a different color palette that I normally wouldn't use. So for this one, I'm going to actually grab a really deep purple. Now, of course, it's going to be light to begin with because I'm going to use a bunch of water. But then as I use less water and more paint, that's when we get the gradation. All right, so I'm going to start off with that light color, but you'll see here, I am not taking that paint all the way to the bottom like I did the green one. So as you can see, I'm just doing one strip of the color, and then I'm going to go on to the next color. I think working that way actually was a little bit better for me. And I made sure to leave or not make my lines as tight. I went ahead and made sure to keep my gradation lines a little bit further apart from each other, excuse me. Now that one there, I needed to redo because I had like a little watermark on it. So I just kind of built that color up a little bit more. Now, when I really start transitioning to this darker purple, I am going to add in a little bit of blue, and I'm also going to make sure to use less water. So when you're doing this, you guys, the biggest suggestion I can tell you is practice, practice, practice. I had did this a few times earlier, like maybe 2 weeks ago. And then I felt like, okay, I think I'm going to be brave enough to try this in the tutorial for the holiday card series. All right, so I love that gradation on this one. The dip dye look is absolutely perfect. And I made sure just to darken up that last little bottom of the purple one. Now, mind you, there is purple tape on here as well, but once we pull this back, you'll really be able to see how gorgeous these colors are. All right, I'm going to go ahead and set this aside, and I want to do a 5x7 card. So I went ahead and cut down my watercolor paper, and this is all Strathmore watercolor paper here. And I want to do this one in a pretty shade of pink. But before I get to it, I do want to make sure I clean my palette, and I do want to make sure that I clean my paintbrush. Those water buckets are off to the side. You can't see them on camera, but I went ahead and made sure I cleaned my brush very well. Another tip I have for you, instead of me putting my brush back into that water, I just started adding water to my palette with a spray brush. That kind of really helped me kind of maneuver more of the consistency that I wanted in my watercolor. So I'm going to paint that first line. I'm going to make sure that's really nice and pretty at the top before I start graduating down that color. Now this color is going to go from like a really soft pink all the way down to like a burgundy pink. I was going to do like into a purple, but I felt like I just want to do a little bit of a burgundy shade. As you can see, I'm building up this color, but again, I'm just doing one stripe of it and then I dry, and then I come back in and do another stripe of it. I'm just totally building up that color. Now, when I go to make my transition, I do start adding in a little bit of that purple. And you're going to see how gorgeous just by mixing in a little bit of the purple that's next to it, or it's almost like a magenta. I shouldn't say purple, a magenta. It's really going to start deepening up. So the color I started with, I believe, is opera. And then this one is more of a magenta color. So it's really going to help me pull that light pink into a darker pink. And once I get to the bottom, that's when I'm going to start pulling in some black. And that's going to really deepen up that color for me. But again, you can see by the time I got to this one, I thought I knew what I was doing. So don't give up if you're trying this technique. And remember, practice makes perfect, you guys. So I wanted to make sure I shared a video with you this year that I was a little bit scared of and a little bit intimidated by, but I gave it a try anyway. And I really did like the results when it was done. All right, I went ahead and heat set that one. I'm going to set these aside to dry. And once they're dry, I'm going to go ahead and die cut these down with some square dies. And for sentiments here, I wanted to keep it simple. I used the Hero Arts Season Words Fancy dies. Now, these dies do happen to have a shadow as well as the sentiment itself. I'm not going to use the shadow today. So right here, I was just kind of trying to decide what words I wanted on my cards. So there's seasons, greetings, wishes, joyful, and warm. For my smaller cards, I'm going to use the joyful one. And for my larger ones, I'm going to use the season's greetings. Now, if you're new to my channel and new to the series, welcome, welcome. And if you don't mind hitting that subscribe button so you can still see what I have going on with the card series, I would greatly appreciate that. So you see, I'm going to use the season's greetings on the larger one, the joyful on the smaller. And I thought I would bring in some gold metallic because I think it's going to work perfectly with each one of these colors. Now I ran it through my die cut machine and I made sure to stack my sentiments. So all I did was use the scraps that I had left over from when I cut down my cardstock, and I just stacked 3 white and then the gold on top, just to give my card a little bit of dimension. Now, I thought that this was just a clean and simple card, and I didn't want to fuss or add any gems to this. I wanted to keep it nice and simple. Now, if you really want to see a pro do this, I suggest you watch Christina, and I would put her video um, up here in the corner, or I'll put it down below so you can find it and you can see how she does it. I was just so inspired to give it a try, and I think I'm in love with it. It's probably as much as Christina because I really do believe it gets a, if you can learn to balance that water and paint ratio, you're going to be really successful. But again, if we don't play with the things we have in our room, we can't make beautiful cards like this. I mean, that is so pretty. I'm going to go ahead and place down the rest of these sentiments onto the card panels. Now, again, I used waffle flower dies on here to trim this down so they would have a nice white border when I placed them onto a card front. I didn't want it to take up my entire card front, but come on, look how gorgeous that pink one is. Again, practice is going to make perfect. So I know if I want to get this better or work on it a little bit harder, I'm going to get better results. So just keep that in mind. And again, don't be hard on yourself. You can make this card, you can make this design. I would love to even see it done with like the liquid watercolors instead of the mission golds. Use what you have on hand to start practicing. And if you want to step it up a notch, then just step up your paint a notch. All right, I'm going to put this onto some white pieces of cardstock. And look how pretty that is. Now, if you wanted to run through your color palette and make one in every single color that you have in your palette and just set these aside, don't put a sentiment on them. They can turn into birthday cards. They can turn into thank you cards. They could be holiday cards, friends cards, you name it. All you have is the color and you can put whatever sentiment you want on top of it. All right, so that's going to be my A2 cards. And now I'm going to come in with, I think this is called an A7 card. So I went ahead and cut down a larger piece of cardstock so I can have a nice clean white border on this. Now, if you guys have missed day one, I'll be sure to put it in the description box below so you guys can check out that video. And I also have all of my holiday card series in one playlist. So you can check that out. I think I remember telling you guys I've been doing this since 2015. So there's lots and lots of inspiration. All right, let me go ahead and slide that in place because I love that precision glue. And now we have gorgeous holiday cards. I think these came out lovely. Even though I was a little nervous, I think they're beautiful. All right, everybody, that is going to be day 4. And we finished all the watercoloring for today. I will see you back here at day 5 very soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.